go on in Peterborough, it's all its own work. The town generates its own electricity from a powerhouse tucked away behind the main street. It's the only local government-operated powerhouse in South Australia, a hark back to the old days when Peterborough was a railway boom town. The Railways Commissioner first suggested a lighting plant for the station alone in 1913, but the townspeople quickly saw the light and suggested a combined scheme, with the local council selling electricity to the railways, and Peterborough's been generating its own electricity ever since, and is still blazing a trail.
We are one of the, possibly the only power station in South Australia running on gas, outside of the state grid of course. I would say that's probably one of its most unique features.
I understand it's also the only one in South Australia run by the local government authority.
Yes, I believe that's true also. There's several other stations in our northeast, also on the west coast, that are run by private enterprise and by councils, but in the case of private enterprise they generate their own. In the case of council undertakings they buy from the trust.
Does it mean that it's run differently because it is a local government power station?
I don't think it's run differently. Bear in mind we have a lot to do with the trust. We take our guidelines from the trust. They're only too willing to advise us in any aspect of generation and or distribution, and that's a major help to us, of course.
How many people would you supply with power?
I'd think about 1,300 consumers, including Yongla in the southwest and Nandabibbi area in the northeast.
I suppose it's something that people will take for granted, but tell me a little bit about the history of the power station.
Well, I can't tell you very much because I'm not as old as I look, but it started around the 1914, supplying mainly street light for Main Street of Peterborough, and from there slowly grew. In those days it was generating DC with a battery bank and was shut down overnight. In 52 we converted to AC the whole town, which involved new engines, new alternators, new switchboard and new town wiring. Then we pursued that story through to 1972 was the advent of the first gas motor, the second one in 78, and now the biggest one we've just purchased December 81.
How did you come to be the only power station outside the city to be using Moomba gas?
Fortunately, I would answer that in one word. The gas authority were approached in those days by Los Santos and weren't interested in putting gas in Peterborough, and then shortly after that they approached the corporation and asked were they interested in the gas. And of course they were if the price was right, and they agreed on a price, and that's how we came to get the first gas engine.
What about the cost of generating your power? Are you cheaper than in the city?
No, I would think not. I would think not. Mainly due to the small size of the undertaking compared to those city undertakings, and don't forget the northern areas of Port Augusta. Cost per kilowatt we would probably be a little higher than those, and of course our overhead costs are proportionately higher.
Do you ever have breakdowns?
Unfortunately yes, most generating plants do. I hope one day that technology may overcome those things, but yes, we have our fair share of breakdowns, more than our fair share I would say.
What generally are the problems?
Well, sometimes it's only line problems, but quite often it is engine failure, especially with the advent of the gas engines. They don't seem to be as reliable as the old diesel engines were.
What about the future? Is the power station going to go on chugging along supplying Peterborough?
Well, I would sincerely hope so, but this depends a lot on the cost of fuel, both for us and for ETSA. If it's vastly more economical for ETSA to supply, well then that's what they would have to do, and we would have to let them do that too because of the consumer.
Most consumers, when things go wrong, don't know who to blame, and that's one of the problems of a town generating its own electricity, because when there's a blackout in Peterborough, it's poor old Norm who's in the firing line.